All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends. This is the new channel that I talked to you about yesterday. So I am so excited to be here. And by the way, this is where I am going to be making most of my live streams and basically to explain certain issues, provide brief analysis, and highlight so many other key topics that I feel you will need to know. So if this is your first time here, of course, most of you is the first time, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so we can grow this channel quickly and reach out to a lot of people from around the world. So as a community, so we can at least exchange ideas and see where are we headed, all of us as a community. So I'm so excited to be here. And because the channel just launched today, as a matter of fact. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is a follow-up to my discussion that I did yesterday, not on this channel, of course, because it wasn't here. I did yesterday on the Geopolitics in Conflict platform, my other YouTube channel. So I started the conversation there, but I'm going to be following from now because I was waiting on this channel to be launched. So that's why I'm so excited to be here. So I also wanted to extend my thanks to all of you yesterday who joined me during that live stream, and some of you were from Kuala Lumpur and Johannesburg to Toronto and Churchville in New Zealand, Arizona. So it was so exciting. Nigeria, Cameroon. It was so excited to see that great diversity of the people, because we are all like a community here. So, and the whole idea, here is the thing, the whole idea of this channel that I just created here is to create that sort of a center for community where we can exchange ideas. Doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter what language you speak. I mean, we all have to communicate in English language, but that's the point is for us to exchange ideas, and we can understand where are we headed as as one unit, shall we say, of humanity, because the world is going through some serious issues, and we need to figure out a way as to how we all can coexist in a peaceful way. I'm a believer of live and let live. That is my motto. So this is what I intend to do in this channel here. So let me answer the question from yesterday that I asked you, whether the rise in oil prices will trigger, could a rise in oil prices will trigger a military war or intervention also. So I agree with the majority of you, and I answered some of your comments, if not most of them, basically. That most of you agreed that there is that possibility that a war could erupt, just in case countries do not have lack of access to resources and so forth. So there's that possibility of that. And as I always say, I use history as my guide. If you want, how did we defeat Japan back in World War II? Because they didn't have access to oil. So Allies forces were able to defeat Japan because they had access to oil, and that was one of the key aspects of it. So I concur with majority of the answers for that, and thank you for that. So let us jump into discussion of our topic here. As I said, I will do a follow-up on what I talked about yesterday. I'll provide you a brief analysis for how I see things going. Then I'll close it up with a question for you, so we can just discuss it further down the road. So it was announced basically that the White House today declared or stated that, actually it was the president himself that declared that all the options are on the table after OPEC Plus alliance decided to cut its oil production despite U.S. warnings. And that the argument from the side of the American administration is that cutting the oil prices, will raise the price of fuel and put the world economies at risk. Well, wait a minute. Isn't the world economies are already at risk because of the inflation, because of the recession, which most government are not disclosing yet? So they can't do, we are on the verge of recession. Come on. Let's be straightforward about it. And this is what, by the way, this channel is going to be about, is about the truth. Let's not sugarcoat it. Just say it the way it is. And that's the whole idea of why we do what we do. So OPEC Plus, by the way, some of you have asked a comment about if I could define what an OPEC or OPEC Plus is, like who are the members. Well, OPEC Plus usually refers to a group of about 23 oil producing countries. That includes, within those 23, that includes 13 countries. Those are the OPEC member. And that includes Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Algeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Libya, Nigeria, the Republic of Congo, and Venezuela. Those are OPEC member. Now, the other 10, they are considered oil producing countries, referred to as OPEC Plus. It includes Russia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Brunei, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Mexico, Oman, South Sudan, and Sudan. So this is why anytime you hear there is a meeting of OPEC Plus, when you hear there is a meeting of OPEC Plus, that means the 23 members. When you hear there is an OPEC Plus, there is an OPEC meeting, just OPEC, that means the first 13 members. Those are the so here is the logical question that many of us will ask, because those are common questions to ask. Why the U.S. is so angry and pissed off at OPEC Plus decision? Well, usually the assumption is, it's not the assumption, as a matter of fact, it has been reported that the White House or Washington, for that matter, when I say Washington, is the establishment, is angry because the decision of the group, the OPEC Plus members, decided to side with Russia. And this is why President of the United States, President Biden, is leading an international effort to isolate energy producing Russia over its military operations in Ukraine. What was interesting about all this is that at the same time, President Biden is working to lower oil prices here for Americans. Well, not because it needs to be done. It's because the upcoming midterm election next month in November. And usually for us in November, every 2 years, we have the congressional elections. That's when, because it's very, very important. You have to understand the domestic politics of the United States, why midterm are very important. Well, they're important for two things. One is it gives you an idea of the next presidential election, because there are only 2 years after that. And second, it gives you an idea about who is now be controlling the agenda. Because who controls both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, controls the agenda. Usually, rarely that you will see in American system that you will have the president, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, all of them controlled by the same party. And that's another conversation which I will get into at some point down the road, as I said, because I will be doing this on a regular basis. Is one of the idea, why are we having only two political parties in American system? That will be a fascinating conversation once we grow this channel to have more sort of subscribers to join us for the conversation. So here's the thing. President Biden did indeed report, or told the reporter, that he was disappointed. Well, I'll come and say, so what? And who cares if you are disappointed? Because to me, the way I look at it as an analyst, you have to come to terms with the reality as to the global order has changed. The global order is shifting. The geopolitical landscape has shifted. Gone the days when the earth used to be the sole property of the United States, as in unipolar, because that things have changed. So when the president is saying he's disappointed, he's kind of like begs the question, does he truly understand what's going on? The world is shifting, and it's shifting towards multipolarity. They're just part of it. Global order, that's how it goes. So, and that also the president mentioned that he has to counter sort of the rise in prices by any means. Usually he's referring to the tapping into the strategic petroleum reserves. But what was very important about his statement is the last two words, and the last two words is, we do have a lot of alternatives, and I put this in quote. I find it very interesting because there's one thing you need to sort of understand when it comes down to politicians stating or suggesting whatever. It's the words they choose. Those are random. Those are not random. These are for specific reason as to why they are mentioned there. So, what are the alternatives are we talking about? Because right there, you will think about sanctions. It's a possibility, but who are you going to sanction? Russia is already sanctioned. And that's why I have the question for you for today, for the end, pertaining to this aspect. So the question becomes is, what could be included in this alternative that the administrative is talking about? Well, I did find out some sort of options the White House has. For example, it could include withdrawing additional amount of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or SPR. This is not going to cut it because the administration already tried this one a couple months ago and it didn't work. Let alone the administration was selling oil to China and India. So at the expense of the American taxpayers. And third thing is that oil at the Strategic Petroleum Reserves does not belong to the government. That belongs to the American people. And I think I already mentioned something about this when I talked about this topic a way back. So the other alternative is, there were about 3 or 4. The second one is to increase internal oil exploration. I see this one as a no-go because the president, when he was running as a candidate, he ran on the platform that it will be no drilling in America. This is why when he became president, the first executive order, well, you guessed it, that shut down the oil gas pipeline comes from Canada. Why? Because the environment considerations. Because for President Biden, if he does this, it will be suicide politically for the entire party. That's why I don't see that happening. So third one is imposing more strict measures. You all see where this is going, right? Which include restrictions on exports. I just, as one who works in Washington, D.C., I'm very familiar with how the establishment works. I was there inside, of course. And those are just political slogans because you have to, the administration, the government, the Washington establishment, have to let the American people hear the sound of, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, which end up being nothing but a bravado. No more, no less. That's usually how I see it. U.S. officials, on the other hand, remain cautious about, how this next steps is going to be implemented. And this is what the chief economist, who is usually the position is as an economic advisor to the president, and his name is Brian Deeds. And he did state it, and I quote, let me get the quote here so I can accurately describe it here. He said, and I quote, "We need to look at what tools are needed," end of quote. Now, you can read between the line, politically speaking, because this is how an administration will refer to, sanction might be on the table. It's just a matter of how we're going to implement it and on whom. Because OPEC Plus is not one country. Are you going to sanction the entire entity? Which doesn't make any sense. The interesting thing is that the economic advisor also suggested that the administration will not rule out an idea being debated in Congress as we speak. And this idea was about passing a law. And that law will drop sovereign immunity in antitrust lawsuits. Basically, this jargon language, all it means is that that could allow the United States government to sue members of the OPEC Plus alliance. If you noticed, it didn't say to sue the entire alliance, because they can't. To sue members of OPEC Plus alliance. It didn't even say to sue OPEC. It's OPEC Plus, because OPEC Plus doesn't carry as much weight as OPEC members, because those are heavy producers. OPEC Plus, except for Russia, does have a lot. So it will be interesting to see how this is unfold, and that's why I said I wanted to follow up on this to see where it is, which direction it is going. So, additionally, Mr. Deeds, Brian, this is the economic advisor to the president, also said, and I quote, "We will conduct an assessment and consult closely with Congress on a range of issues." And again, I don't know what they could do. Are you going to go and force a country to produce more oil? They are sovereign states. No, they just can't do that. No. And the argument from the administration is that the alliance decision was kind of unjustified. Well, unjustified according to whom? To them, the alliance, the OPEC Plus, they're looking at the bottom line, and the bottom line is profit. Straightforward. You cut production, oil prices goes up, more money for their budgets. Straightforward. It's like a business. Like I said yesterday, the bottom line for any cartel is going to think in terms, in an economic setting, is going to think in terms of economic profit. And the argument of the White House that, well, it is not justified, the decision. Why? Because it will severely worsen the global economy. Well, the global economy has already suffered from many other issues unrelated to oil. Like, for example, the shipments, that's been interrupted for the last 2 or 3 years due to the what we went through with the pandemic and so forth. So there's that possibility of that. There is also the idea of the global financial market, the instability of currencies and so forth. So the market has already, global market that is, or global economy, has already some issues before. Of course, the Ukraine war adds to that because of the energy, the degradation of the economic outlook in Europe. It's just making it even harder. And you can just see now the consumers in Europe. I will start with Britain. Europe, Brits are suffering big time. And the government is kind of in denial of sort. This is why their central bank went ahead and increased interest rate. Well, I ain't going to solve the problem because people don't have enough money. Now, when you increase interest rates, you're just making it worse. But here is what I found also interesting about the statements from the economic advisor, that is. And he argues that maybe this cut in productions might not have as much impact on the market as feared, which is nonsense. The reason being because just yesterday, the stock markets dropped. I mean, it recovered on certain areas, but you can just already feel in the impact of the global prices going up in the oil. I was driving today. Yesterday, I told you I saw oil prices, gas at the gas pump at $3.19. Today, I saw it at $3.29. Another place I saw it for $3.39. Within just less than 24 hours. So when a statement comes from an official saying that, well, this production cut might not have as much impact, I would say that's a weak argument, and that's nonsense. Yeah, because it just doesn't make any sense. You're looking at a 2 million barrel a day. This is not 100,000. It's going to reflect on the reality. And the reality, and this is what this geopolitics is all about. That's why I called it geopolitical trends. You have to see the trends and understand where that trend is headed. It's going to trickle down to average Joe and average Jane. That's why I don't buy the arguments of what the official is saying. Here is the interesting aspect also. One of the interesting aspects is that the US is now looking, get this, check this out. The US now looking at easing sanctions on Venezuela. This is where you start to realize, whether you as a government, you have a cohesive foreign policy or you have a fragmented foreign policy. This is an example of a fragmented foreign policy. You are sanctioning heavily that country, and you're going back to it and said, hey, we need your assistance in producing more oil. I mean, where is the logic into all this? Somebody will have to sort of advise the president that, sir, you can't say that because it doesn't make sense. What do we think? What do we think? Just because we said this, Venezuela is going to say, sure, we'll open up all our oil fields for you. Produce as many oil as you want. It's not going to work. They are not going to pump more oil just because the US says so. And this is, again, a reflection of that reality that is not being digested yet in Washington, that the world, the global geopolitical landscape has shifted, that the global order that has been held for the last 70 plus years, in which the United States was at the top of every pecking order, is changing. Most of the countries on global south are looking now differently. And I will do a specific video on the elections in Brazil, because that is one of the hallmark of where you're going to see that change, with the assumption, and only one, and that assumption is if Lula da Silva wins the election. That's the only option it will happen. But here's the thing about, even we are saying or ask, we might consider talking to Venezuela. We already put a condition. And you know what the condition is? Is that that the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, must agree to resume talks with the country's opposition. Who on earth will even consider something this crazy? It just doesn't work. The fact is this: OPEC Plus, this cut in oil, it certainly is going to lift the prices up, increase prices. And at the same time, it's going to boost global inflation concerns. That is the real economic concern about it moving forward. I also looked at this issue from another angle, because one thing I intend to do in this channel is I will provide you both sides of the argument. Of course, I will never, ever reach a conclusion for you. The reason being, this is why I would like to have our forum here in which we can exchange ideas and questions and all that, just for us to have an understanding, all of us. But for me to reach a conclusion for you, no, I will not do that. And it's not the right thing to do to begin with. So that is one of the things. But I will provide you with both sides of the argument and let you reach your own conclusion. So here's the other side of the argument. And I'm looking at it from the Russian Deputy Prime Minister, Alexander Novak. And Novak just said yesterday, he just mentioned this. And by the way, I will provide you with the link to all this to see where I got this information and so forth, so you can have a look at it yourself. What he stated was that Russia may end up reducing oil production altogether. But this is not in conjunction with OPEC Plus. It is with it to a degree. Russia's looking at it from another angle altogether. And that angle it has to do with countering the repercussions of the West's imposition of a cap on Russian energy prices. We did a video on it. I did it last time on Geopolitics in Conflict platform. because I didn't have this channel. So, and I did talk about this price cap ain't gonna work because Russia is a sovereign state. It's almost like, for example, you go to grocery shopping, okay? You go buy something, and the owner of the shop, or whatever, comes to you and said, the price is $10. He said, no, you need to pay $15. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna just take off. I say thanks, but no thanks. So this is my belief. Why the Russian declaration? It's aimed at hitting two birds with one stone, supporting OPEC Plus on one end, but also sending a message to the EU to counter the EU's imposition of a cap on Russian energy prices. That's the way I see it play out. There's the other aspect of that: the industry or industries around the world. Most of them mentioned that most likely this oil cut is going to lead to higher prices, and especially from the Middle Eastern oil. Why they specify just the Middle East? It's beyond me. But also I could think because the majority of oil and the large productions are from the Middle East. Because here is the thing: Middle Eastern oil, just Middle Eastern by itself, meets about 2/3 of Asia's demand. And Asia's market is no small when you consider China and India and South Korea and Japan and so forth. It's no small market. And you add to that the ongoing inflation. That's not a word. Inflation. You add that to it. This is why you have concerns right now in, for example, Japan and South Korea. South Korea's refineries won't be able to sustain that because there will be a drop, first of all, in oil, and they're going to be struggling for that. Even in India, I found it very interesting. India now is kind of struggling with the rising living cost, despite India bringing oil from Russia at a discounted price. And Europe is another matter altogether. I don't see how Europe is saying, yeah, we're going to find an alternative. As a matter of fact, today, Borrell, he's the security president for EU or something like that. He said that, we're going to phase out Russian energy completely. Where are you going to get oil from? Let alone the cost. And you want to do it by this winter? There's no time. These things like this, it doesn't just you put oil in a tanker and just ship it the next day. No, there's a lot, it's a long process that is involved in this. And this is why the European Central Bank, accounts due to, as German now, the Germans' orders, it's pointing to a deeper problems that, they are not disclosing. And of course they won't disclose. You look at it in the United Kingdom. Inflation is so high. This is why adding interest rates, when the central bank in England raised that, it just made it even worse. So the European Central Bank will publish the account of its last policy meeting soon. And by the way, and this publication usually is going to indicate that it casts more light on how much enthusiasm there is in Frankfurt for more big rate hikes coming on the way. And why is this? Because the slowdown in the Eurozone economy becomes increasingly serious. Why is that? And that's a key word, increasingly serious. Why? Because lack of energy. As a matter of fact, some industries in Germany have already been warned that by the end of the year, they need to shut down. The Euro system for the central bank in its entirety now openly warning of a recession. Hello. Despite the European Central Bank preferring not to acknowledge that risk in its latest forecast in September, which was just last month. That's why I find very fascinating, you know, what's been reported versus what it is. And this is what prompts me to establish this channel, because I want to provide you, no matter how brief the analysis is, because if I do it'll take a lot of time. So I want to just do it slowly and methodically as we grow this channel. So we'll figure out different ways of how I'm going to be doing this with you moving forward. So, so here's my analysis to you. Tie it to all this. In the last decade or so, more and more energy experts are starting to focus their analysis now on the US energy market and how it could shift the power play in the global energy market. Well, that was what they were saying. Now we are realizing their assessment was way off. When you have the United States wanted to reach out to Venezuela, ask it for oil. When you have the United States going to Saudi Arabia begging for oil, and all of them saying, "What the heck are you asking? You got to be out of your mind." Because that's just how I found it very, very odd and weird. I did argue this in my last book, The Dynamics of Russia's Geopolitics, Remaking the Global Order. I did argue this a couple of years ago. And I said back then, in the last decade or so, more and more energy experts are starting to focus their analysis on the US. And again, I challenged that assumption there. And the reason why I challenge it is because the shift in the geopolitical landscape, in the global energy market, and what will it really means. And this goes to the heart of how geopolitics affects energy prices. This is what I want you to get. No matter what you hear, no matter how it is worded, geopolitics affects energy prices. So the oil prices is, for instance, especially susceptible to political outcomes. And what political outcomes are we talking about here? You look at the Ukraine crisis, you look at the Taiwan issue, you look at, for example, the Brazilian elections, you look at now the Turkey, the tensions with Greece, you look at even Poland. Now, this morning, I just find out that they are now might be willing to host U.S. nuclear weapons. That's a seismic change within the global geopolitical landscape. So oil prices are susceptible to those changes in the geopolitical landscape. And global energy consumptions is changing, as countries work to find alternative. Alternative to what? Not to oil, but a rather alternative to suppliers. That's what is very, very, very important. So, and given this reality, it just doesn't take genius to figure out. You put one and one together. So, when you think about it in the context of OPEC Plus reaching that decision, well, mainly for Russia, because Russia's abundance of untapped gas and oil demands attention for that. And one must pay specifically attention to Russia's strategic gas reserves, saddling between Asia and Europe. This is once again where the trends comes in. I remember I did a video on the other platform about Euro-Asia, how it's going to flip global order. So why? Because the gas fields stretches from west to the east of Siberia and the island of Sakhalin. And for this reason, and this reason only, you have to also keep in mind as to why China made the decision to expand its relations on many spheres with Russia, especially in the energy sector. Yes, there are others, like, for example, the military and what's the third one? About technology, but it's in the energy sector. That's why I take specific interest in China's energy focus, to highlight how China end up financing projects in the Arctic. It's not doing it because China cares. It's doing it because China sees the opportunity, a business opportunity, having access to oil sources. And stems also from the fact that China will benefit from investing in the energy infrastructure pipeline. Why? Because the untapped oil reserves and natural gas and all that stuff reserves, tap about $35 trillion. And I did mention this a couple of times ago. So this is what's important for you to understand why these dynamics are very, very crucial. As I said earlier, this is the first time I'm doing this live here on this channel. I'm going to be doing more. Once again, we get more subscriber. So please spread out the word about this channel here, because I will be providing you analysis about these issues that you need to know and have a better understanding of. And the objective is always to create a community where we can exchange ideas. So here's my question for you for today. And the question is this: can the United States sanction Saudi Arabia over its support for Russia? I repeat, can the United States sanction Saudi Arabia over its support for Russia? Let me know what you think in the comment section and I will respond to it. So usually I'm going to create a motto by which I'm going to be ending every live stream I come on. And this motto goes like this: as always, geopolitics impacts your daily life in more ways than one. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. See ya. Bye bye.